All right, diving right in, folks. You guys really threw us a curveball this time with excerpts from Gary Shapiro's Pivot or Die: How Leaders Thrive When Everything Changes.
It's a good one, though. A really good one.
Oh, absolutely. And this deep dive, we're tackling how companies, and even us, as individuals, can use change to their advantage, not just survive, but actually thrive in a world that just, well, never sits still.
And the best part is, Shapiro, he's the CEO of the Consumer Technology Association, right? So he's seen all this firsthand, especially at CES. He's not just talking the talk. He's been in the trenches watching these companies rise and fall, all based on these pivots.
Exactly. He's practically got a season ticket to the biggest tech show on the planet, watching these companies make or break themselves. So let's get to the heart of it. Change is inevitable. That's a given. But Shapiro's saying to truly succeed, we've got to master this thing called pivoting.
And you wouldn't believe how many of these tech giants we know today, they started in completely different fields. Like Nokia, you think cell phones were?
Yeah, of course.
But guess what? They started as a paper mill.
Wait, hold on. A paper mill?
Paper mill. And Nokia is not the only one. Samsung, they're all about smartphones and those awesome TVs, right?
Oh, yeah, I love my Samsung TV.
Well, get this. They started out exporting, wait for it, dried fish and flour.
You're kidding me. So my fancy TV has roots in dried fish. That's wild. Okay, what else? What other weird beginnings did Shapiro dig up?
All right, how about this? Panasonic started with bicycles.
Bicycles. No way.
And Nintendo, the video game empire, playing cards.
Wow. Okay, my mind is officially blown. Even YouTube. Think about YouTube, the king of video.
Right. Cat videos, makeup tutorials, everything.
And it started as a video dating site.
That's right.
So what we're learning here is that none of these huge companies just magically appeared as we know them now. They had to adapt. They had to pivot.
And Shapiro argues that's the story for pretty much every successful startup out there. Think about it. PayPal, Airbnb, X, the one that used to be Twitter.
Yeah.
Groupon, Instagram, Netflix, even Slack. All of them, they had to ditch their original plans and, you guessed it, pivot to find success.
So pivoting, it's like this secret ingredient in the recipe for a successful startup. But what about companies that are already doing well? I mean, does Shapiro have any examples of those companies navigating these big shifts?
He does. Amazon's the perfect example. Think about their journey. They started as an online bookstore, which was already pretty revolutionary back then. Then they came out with the Kindle, changed the whole reading game.
Yeah, the Kindle, that was huge.
Then they completely revolutionized shopping with Amazon Prime.
Oh yeah, can't live without Prime now.
And cloud computing with AWS.
Yeah.
And then they went and bought Whole Foods. They just keep evolving.
It's like they're always reinventing themselves, one step ahead of everyone else.
That's exactly what Shapiro's getting at. It's not a one-time thing, this pivoting business. The successful companies, they bake continuous pivoting right into their DNA. They make it a habit. In fact, he talks about how even the internet itself had to go through a massive pivot.
Okay, now you've got me curious. Tell me more about this internet pivot.
So back in the day when the internet was this new thing, there was a big question mark hanging over its head. Should it be commercialized?
Really?
Yeah. There were a lot of folks who thought it should stay purely academic, just for research and stuff.
Can you imagine? No online shopping, no social media. I mean, the internet's like oxygen these days.
It's hard to imagine life without it, right? But back then, it was a big debate.
So how did things change? How did we go from no commerce to, well, everything being online?
It took a policy shift. A law in Virginia actually opened the door to commercializing the internet.
Wow, so one law changed everything.
Pretty much. And then companies like Hotwired and Netscape, they jumped right in. They started using advertising and basically created the blueprint for the e-commerce world we know and love today.
It's amazing to think that one policy change had such a massive ripple effect. It changed not just how businesses operate, but how we live, how we connect with each other.
It really highlights how these seemingly small decisions can trigger massive changes. American Express is another great example. You've got that Amex card in your wallet, right?
Sure do. I always thought they were a financial services company through and through.
Well, brace yourself. They started way back in the 1850s. But as an express mail delivery service.
Hold up. You mean they were like the FedEx or UPS of the 1800s?
Exactly. They were moving packages, not money. It wasn't until World War I, when the government took over transportation, that they shifted to financial services.
Wow. So from shipping packages to money orders, traveler's checks, and then that little plastic card we all rely on. That's a pretty wild journey.
It shows that sometimes these pivots are forced on you by things outside your control.
Oh.
And that's why Shapiro outlines these 4 types of pivots. Because he says to come up with the right strategy, you've got to know which type you're dealing with.
Okay, so let's break down these 4 types. What are they?
Well, we've already touched on 2 of them. There's the startup pivot. That's where, a young company, they're still trying to figure things out, find the right product for the right market, and they keep tweaking things until they hit that sweet spot.
Makes sense.
And then there's the forced pivot. That's when something big happens that's completely outside your control. A war, a pandemic, a new law, and it forces your hand. Like what happened with American Express during World War I.
So knowing which type of pivot you're facing is crucial. It's like you need to know the rules of the game before you start playing.
Exactly. Now, the other 2 pivots are a little more subtle. We've got the failure pivot, where a company learns from its mistakes and uses those lessons to chart a new course.
So failure doesn't always have to be the end of the story. It can actually be a launch pad for something even better.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's the success pivot. This is when a company is doing well, but they choose to change things up to grab new opportunities or to stay ahead of the curve before challenges even arise.
Like Amazon. They're always branching out, even though their core business is doing fantastic.
Bingo. So those are the 4 types of pivots. But Shapiro doesn't stop there. He dives into how companies have actually used these pivots to achieve incredible success. And that's where things get really interesting. One company that really shows how important it is to listen to your users is IMVU.
IMVU. Okay, help me out here. Refresh my memory. What exactly do they do?
It's kind of a social media thing, but way more immersive. It's actually the world's biggest social metaverse platform, like a virtual world, where users can create these avatars and hang out, do all sorts of stuff. But here's the thing. The founder, Eric Ries, he actually started out wanting to create an instant messaging platform.
Wow, talk about a change of plans. How'd they go from instant messaging to a whole metaverse? That's a huge leap.
Ries, he was smart. He realized early on that people weren't really into his initial idea. They wanted something more, something where they could really connect, really feel like they were part of a community. So he basically scrapped the whole instant messaging thing and went all in on this virtual world concept.
That takes guts to just ditch your original vision and go in a completely different direction. I mean, that's going to be tough.
It is. But a lot of times, that's the key to really finding that perfect match, that product market fit, And speaking of smart pivots, Shapiro has some really inspiring stories from the world of accessibility tech. Have you ever heard of Waymap?
Waymap. Yeah, it rings a bell, but I can't quite place it.
It's this really cool audio-based navigation app, specifically designed for people who are visually impaired.
Oh, right. That's awesome. How does their story fit into all this pivoting stuff?
Well, the founder, Tom Pei, he realized that if he really wanted to make a difference, really wanted this app to take off, he needed to make it appeal to more than just a niche market.
Yeah, that makes sense. You've got to reach a wider audience to really have an impact.
So instead of marketing it as just an app for people with disabilities, he positioned it as a navigation tool that anyone could use.
That's brilliant. Not only did it open up their market, but it also created this incredible community, right? You've got sighted users contributing their steps, helping map routes for those who are visually impaired. It's this beautiful cycle of inclusivity and collaboration.
It really is. And while we're on the topic of cool origin stories, we got to talk about Slack.
Yeah.
You know Slack, right? The workplace communication tool. Everyone's using it.
Of course. Who doesn't use Slack these days? It's like the lifeblood of any modern office.
Well, believe it or not, it actually came from a failed video game.
Wait, what? A video game? Now that's a twist I was not expecting.
Right. It was called Glitch. And it didn't exactly set the world on fire, But the creators, they were smart. They took some of the best elements from Glitch, the characters, the whole fun, quirky vibe, even the guide they had named Pet Rock, and they reinvented them for Slack.
So sometimes a successful pivot isn't about starting from scratch. It's about taking something that didn't quite work in one area and finding a new purpose for it, giving it a second life.
Exactly. And the Ring doorbell is another great example of this. Remember Jamie Siminoff, the guy who pitched it on Shark Tank?
Oh, yeah. He didn't get a deal, but man, did he prove them wrong. That Ring doorbell is everywhere now.
He's the perfect example of a success pivot. He started out marketing Ring as a convenient way to see who's at your door, but then he shifted gears and emphasized its security features.
And that completely changed the game. Suddenly, it wasn't just about convenience, it was about safety and peace of mind. It became a must-have for homeowners.
And it's not just about making money, it's about making a real difference. He partnered with law enforcement, and now Ring doorbells are helping to reduce crime and solve cases.
A simple shift in focus, but with massive ripple effects. It shows you the power of a well-executed pivot. It goes way beyond just business. But Shapiro doesn't just focus on the feel-good success stories. He also tackles the tough stuff. He dedicates a whole section to what he calls forced pivots. Those changes you have to make when circumstances beyond your control come knocking. Yeah, like a global pandemic, for instance. COVID-19 forced so many businesses to either adapt or face the consequences. It was sink or swim.
Exactly. Shapiro talks about how the tech sector really stepped up during that time. Companies had to pivot on a dime to provide tools for remote work, online education, even just keeping people entertained while they were stuck at home. It accelerated trends that were already happening, like online shopping, telemedicine, and virtual events.
It's like the pandemic hit this giant fast-forward button, pushing us years ahead in terms of adopting all these digital technologies. There was no choice, really.
Yeah. And while some companies struggled, others really thrived. Shapiro talks about the rise of health tech as a prime example. He mentions BioIntelliSense, a company that had a wearable device for monitoring chronic conditions. Well, they pivoted and started using it to track COVID-19 symptoms.
Wow. Talk about being in the right place at the right time with the right technology and the flexibility to adapt.
And there are some fascinating historical examples of forced pivots, too. Have you ever thought about the history of GPS? I mean, it's everywhere now, but it wasn't always that way.
I use GPS every day to get around, but honestly, I've never really thought about where it came from.
Well, get this. It was originally developed for the military, specifically for tracking submarines. Who knew, right?
No way. GPS started as a military thing. It's hard to imagine a world without it now.
Right. But after the tragic downing of Korean Airlines Flight 007, which accidentally flew into Soviet airspace because of navigational errors, the US government decided to make GPS available to the public.
So this incredibly tragic event actually led to a technological revolution. It's amazing how these things happen sometimes.
It shows you that even the most unexpected events can lead to incredible innovation. And sometimes these forced pivots happen under the most difficult circumstances imaginable. Shapiro talks about some Ukrainian startups, like Relief Paper, that continue to operate and even innovate during the Russian invasion. Talk about resilience.
It's inspiring to see that level of grit, that determination to keep going, even in the face of such hardship. It speaks to the human spirit, our ability to adapt and overcome, even when things seem impossible.
It really does. And it shows that pivoting isn't just a business strategy, it's a life skill, a way of thinking that can help us get through any challenge and come out stronger on the other side.
So it's not just about companies pivoting, it's about all of us pivoting in our own lives.
Absolutely. And that's what makes Shapiro's book so powerful. But he doesn't just focus on past pivots. He looks ahead to the future, and the role pivoting will play in shaping that future. He's got a whole section on pivoting for a better future.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What kind of pivots does he see on the horizon? What are the big areas he thinks we need to focus on?
He highlights a few key areas like environmental sustainability, the rise of digital health, and the ongoing push for accessibility and technology. He talks about how companies are really starting to integrate eco-friendly practices and materials into their products, which is awesome. I mean, it's about time, right?
It makes sense. Consumers are way more aware of these issues now, and they want to support companies that are doing the right thing, environmentally speaking.
Exactly. It's not just a trend anymore, it's an expectation. Shapiro points to the development of cobalt-free batteries and advances in solid-state EV batteries as examples of how the tech industry is stepping up.
That's good news. We need all hands on deck to tackle climate change.
Right. Absolutely. He's also super excited about the potential of digital health. Things like wearable tech for monitoring our health, the rise of telehealth, which exploded during the pandemic.
Oh yeah, telehealth was a game changer. So much more convenient.
Exactly, and new devices are coming out all the time. He mentions Abbott's Lingo CGM, which helps people manage their diabetes. It's pretty amazing stuff.
It seems like we're headed towards a future where technology plays an even bigger role in managing our health and well-being, preventing illness, and treating it more effectively.
No doubt. And it's not just about treating illness, it's about empowering people, giving them the tools to be proactive about their health. And then there's the whole movement towards accessibility in tech design, making sure products and services are designed to meet the needs of everyone, including people with disabilities.
That's awesome. Technology should be inclusive. It should work for everyone.
Absolutely. Shapiro highlights some cool examples like LG's Relumino glasses, which help people with visual impairments, And then there's XRAI Glass, which provides real-time captioning for people who are deaf or hard of hearing.
That's incredible technology. Really life-changing stuff.
And there's Mind Immersive. They have this Elderverse project using VR to create engaging experiences for senior citizens.
It's great to see companies realizing that accessibility isn't just the right thing to do, it's good business too. It expands their market and leads to better products for everyone.
Exactly. But while Shapiro is excited about the future and all the possibilities, he also doesn't shy away from some of the big challenges, especially for the United States.
Oh, what kind of challenges is he talking about? I'm curious.
He's worried about things like our national debt, the fact that it keeps growing. He sees it as a major threat to our long-term economic health.
Yeah, the national debt is definitely a concern.
He's also concerned about what he sees as a decline in some of those core American values,
Yeah.
things like hard work, a strong sense of community, patriotism. He thinks we need to rediscover those values if we want to continue to be a strong nation.
It's not just about the economy and technology, it's about who we are as a people, right?
And then there's the rise of China as a global power. He talks about his trips to China and how impressed he was with their rapid growth and their ambition.
It's definitely a different world out there now, more competitive than ever. But I'm guessing Shapiro doesn't just highlight the problems without offering some solutions, right?
You know him too well. He's a big proponent of immigration reform, especially making it easier for talented people in STEM fields to come to the U.S. and stay here, especially those who graduate from our universities.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Attracting and keeping the best and brightest minds from around the world is crucial in today's global economy.
He thinks it's crazy that we educate these brilliant students and then make it so hard for them to stay here and contribute to our economy. He calls it a brain drain and says we're shooting ourselves in the foot.
It does seem like we're missing out on a huge opportunity by not making it easier for them to stay.
He also talks about the growing skills gap we have here in the U.S., especially in areas like technology and manufacturing. He thinks we need to focus more on apprenticeships and creating those alternative pathways to good-paying jobs, Not everyone needs a 4-year degree.
It's about recognizing that there are many paths to success, right?
Exactly. And he walks the walk, too. He talks about how IBM, under Jeannie Rometty, started this apprenticeship program, specifically designed for people who have the skills but maybe not the traditional credentials. He thinks this kind of program could be a model for other companies, other industries. It's about giving people a chance.
So it's not just about talking about change, it's about actually doing something, right? Taking action and creating new opportunities.
Exactly. And what I love about Shapiro is he doesn't stop at policy and economics. He also dives into the cultural shifts that are happening in America.
Right, he talks about that, his concerns about a decline in certain core American values like hard work and community. He really thinks we need to get back to those values if we want to thrive as a nation.
It's not just about the numbers, the GDP, the technology. It's about who we are as a people, as a society, what we believe in.
And that's where Shapiro's personal story and his thoughts on leadership become really interesting. He talks about how he was raised, how his parents instilled in him the importance of hard work, taking responsibility, and how those values have shaped his entire worldview.
It's always fascinating to hear about the experiences that shape a person's thinking. And Shapiro's journey, from his early days in the DCR industry to leading the Consumer Technology Association, it's a great example of the power of being adaptable, open to change.
He didn't just get lucky, he had to navigate a lot of twists and turns to get where he is today.
And he really stresses the importance of being willing to change your mind, to admit when you're wrong, to seek out what he calls the third way, that creative solution that goes beyond the obvious choices.
It's like that story of King Solomon refusing to split the baby in half, He found a solution that protected life and prioritized wisdom and compassion. It's about thinking outside the box.
Exactly. And it's clear that Shapiro's whole approach to life is intertwined with this idea of pivoting. It's not just a business strategy for him, it's how he lives.
That's pretty powerful. And he really emphasizes throughout the book that leaders need to act with integrity, with purpose. It's about making a positive impact on the world.
So it's not just about pivoting for profit, it's about pivoting for progress, for a better future for everyone. It's really inspiring, actually, to see how he applies these ideas to his own life. And it's not just about personal growth either. Shapiro takes it a step further. He talks about the pivots America needs to make as a nation to stay competitive, to really thrive in this century.
Okay, I'm all ears. What kind of national pivot does he propose?
Well, he argues that we need to seriously rethink how we approach innovation. as a country.
Hmm?
And for him, that starts with getting our financial house in order,
Great.
tackling the national debt. He sees it as this looming threat to our long-term economic stability.
Yeah, the national debt. It's definitely a hot topic. Everyone's got an opinion on it.
He's pretty straight talking about it, actually. He points out we're spending more on interest payments alone than we are on national defense. And he says that's just not sustainable. We can't keep kicking that can down the road.
He makes a good point.
And immigration reform, that's another big piece of this national pivot he's talking about.
Right, because attracting and keeping top talent is crucial, especially in today's world. It's a global race.
Exactly. And he's particularly passionate about, making it easier for international students to stay in the U.S. after they graduate, especially the ones in those critical STEM fields: science, technology, engineering, math.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive to educate these bright minds and then basically show them the door.
He calls it a brain drain and says it's a huge missed opportunity for the U.S. We're basically handing over our talent to our competitors.
Makes sense.
He's also concerned about, the growing skilled gap we have in the U.S., especially in tech and manufacturing. He thinks we need to put more emphasis on things like apprenticeships, create more of those alternative paths to good-paying jobs.
Right, because a four-year college degree isn't the only path to a successful career.
Exactly. Not everyone thrives in that traditional academic setting.
Yeah.
And, he practices what he preaches. He talks about IBM under Ginny Rometty. They launched this apprenticeship program specifically targeting people who have the skills, but maybe not the college degree.
Yeah.
He thinks it's a great model for other companies to follow.
So real, concrete action, that's what's needed, not just talk.
Right. And what I really appreciate about Shapiro is he goes beyond just policy and economics. He also talks about those cultural shifts happening in America.
Yeah, he mentions that this concern he has about, some core American values declining: hard work, community, patriotism.
He really thinks we need to rediscover those values if we want to be successful as a nation.
Because it's not just about the economy and the technology. It's about who we are, right?
Yeah.
What we stand for.
Exactly. That's where his personal story, and his thoughts on leadership, they really come into play. He talks about how his parents raised him. They emphasized hard work, taking responsibility for your actions, and how those values, they really shaped his approach to, everything, really. Life and leadership.
It's always fascinating to hear about those experiences that shape someone's thinking. And Shapiro's journey, from those early days in the VCR industry to running the CTA, it really underscores the importance of being adaptable, of being willing to embrace change.
He's had to make a lot of those pivots himself to get where he is today.
Exactly.
And he really stresses this idea of, being open to new ideas, admitting when you're wrong, not being afraid to say, hey, I messed up, and always looking for that third way, that creative solution that maybe no one else has thought of.
It's like that story of King Solomon. He didn't just go with the easy answer, the obvious solution. He thought outside the box.
Exactly. He found a way to protect life, to prioritize wisdom and compassion.
And it's clear that for Shapiro, this whole idea of pivoting, it's not just some business strategy he came up with, it's how he lives his life.
It really is. And he emphasizes that leaders, they need to act with integrity, with purpose. It's about making the world a better place, not just lining your own pockets.
It's about pivoting for progress, for a better future for all of us, not just for some.
Exactly. And, as we've been talking about Shapiro's book, it's really got me thinking about my own life, the choices I've made, the pivots I've taken, the ones I maybe should have taken. It's a good reminder that we all have the power to change course, to adapt, to create the future we want.
That's what's so great about a book like this, right? It's not just some dry business theory. It gets you thinking about your own journey, your own life, how you can apply these ideas to your own career, your own personal growth.
Pivot or Die isn't just a book title. It's a call to action, to embrace change, to learn from our mistakes, and to never stop moving forward.
So for our listeners out there, don't be afraid to pivot. It might be the best decision you ever make.
It's not just about surviving. It's about thriving. It's about using change as a springboard to unlock new possibilities and create that better future we keep talking about for yourself, for your community, for the world. And if you're interested in learning more, diving deeper into these ideas, we highly recommend checking out Shapiro's book. It's a thought-provoking read that will leave you feeling energized and ready to tackle any challenge that comes your way.
Absolutely. Well said. And that's a wrap for this deep dive, folks. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next episode of The Deep Dive.